Welcome, everybody. Oh my God, this is absolutely fantastic. There's so many people. It shows you how important this subject is. So it's so lovely to see you all. I have muted everyone. And if you're not on mute, please mute yourselves until the end when we can have questions with Anna. So
sorry, that's Angelo.
That's okay. I knew it was Angela. So let me just keep admitting. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this talk about transition. We know how important this is to all of us, including myself. I've got a 19-year-old son, and I've just managed to get him he's 18, to stay in his provision for one more year, and then we're going to look into what's going to happen next. And it's a really scary time. It's really scary that we can't go and see places. But what we're going to do is we've got the lovely Anna Selby-Wells from Home Care, who's going to be talking about transition. But what I'll do first is I will just pass you over to Anna to welcome you all. But please put your questions in the chat, and also I will open the doors to the chat at the end of the session. Over to you, Anna.
Okay, thank you everyone. Welcome to our charity workshops. We've been doing quite a few of these now because of COVID. So this came about because of Harvey and me with Katie. People didn't actually realise how far in advance that they needed to start preparing for transition. You'll be pleased to know that there'll be a second documentary on BBC which will be started filming in the summer, and to see how Harvey gets on. Katie still hasn't found out yet whether she's got a place for Harvey. She's got to wait till March to see if funding's been allocated. So yes, fantastic feedback from the documentary and so many questions, so hence why we're holding this workshop today. And just to remind you that we've got our Autism Expo coming up, which is next month. We normally do it at Brunel University, and we will be doing it online. We've got 7 fantastic speakers. It's going to be Friday the 26th of March and Saturday the 27th of March. All the information's on the charity website. And also one last thing, please don't forget to sign my petition. I think I'm up to 3,400 signatures, not quite a week yet, so it's doing quite well. And that is who's going to look after my sons when I'm gone. You might hear Angelo in the background. He's been a little bit restless today. So if you see me disappear now and again, it's just because I'm just trying to settle him. Okay, so over to you, Anna. I've never presented to another Anna before. So yeah, over to you, Anna, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions at the end.
Thank you very much. Yes, hello everyone. It's nice to see so many faces actually. Thank you to Anna and Tally for inviting me along. Yes, I'm going to talk to you today about transition into adult services, just to share some experiences of other families who have been through the processes that can hopefully just share a bit of insight really with you about the processes that you might come up against, and also just share some of their tips really and advice of things to think about and consider. We would be going into events like the AKO Expo or autism shows or the Kids to Adults events, or into schools themselves to transition events, which unfortunately due to circumstances aren't happening at the moment. So it's really great that something like this has been put on, because it gives you that opportunity to hear things that, you know, transition still needs to happen. And it's important to start thinking about it. And sometimes it can feel like it's so far away, but actually it's important to start to gather all those bits of information, to start piecing it together so that you can be as informed as you can be, ready for when that time does happen. And if it's happening sooner, then you can start to get things moving, particularly at the moment because things are taking a little bit longer with certain things. So yeah, so I've got a PowerPoint presentation, so I'll work through that. First of all, I'll just explain a little bit about where I've come from, and share some of the experiences, and at the end, yeah, just open it for some questions. So I hope this works. I've just tested it, so it should work. Let's give it a go. Can you see this okay? Hopefully you can see that. Fantastic. Okay, so just to tell you a little bit about where I come from. So I work for a company called Home from Home Care, which is actually a specialist residential care provision for adults, 18 onwards, who have learning disabilities, complex needs, autism, epilepsy, complex health, mental health. It was a service that was actually created by a family themselves. Now the family, Paul and Anne, their son Hugo, they did it because they really struggled to find the right provision for their daughter Hugo's sister Laura. And so after quite a long journey, in fact, they ended up setting up Home from Home Care. So it's important that I can share this with you, because actually their journey in setting up a service, it can highlight some of the things that you might want to think about or to talk about when you are looking at those options, and give you that kind of comparison as well. So just to explain a little bit about Home from Home Care. So it does have 11 registered services in Lincolnshire across 5 locations. And they support 87 individuals who are funded by over 50 authorities across the country. And that's quite important to know, because as a specialist provision, we support individuals from all over the country who are funded by their local authorities, where families have found us and wanted to explore that option because they just haven't been able to find anything locally. And I will touch on this a little bit more. It's a bit like looking for any kind of specialist provision. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's not always on your doorstep, but I will talk a little bit more about that. As a provision, what Paul and Anne really wanted was to create environments that really suit an individual's needs. So it's creating a very bespoke package. And if that's what you're needing to look for, it's about asking those questions. How can a provider do that? What is it going to look like? And also the type of individual, it's about compatibility. So who are they going to be living with? Is there that compatibility there? Is that a focus that the provider think about when you look at it? So we design very bespoke packages and tailor environments to meet individuals' needs, and they're called our specialist integration homes. And we do use quite creative solutions and technology. It's all about promoting independence for young people going through education. Their education looks, it's different for every young person, but it is always about that. What's the next steps? What are their outcomes they're wanting to achieve? Is it building up to more independence? Is it, having those meaningful activities and fulfilled days, but it's having an ordinary life? And that's all the time what we're wanting to continue from young people, being in education, moving into their adult life, really. So it's important to ask those questions, how do young people, how does a provider support a young person to continue their education, I suppose, really, in adult provision. So this is just some photos really to show you some of the environments, just to give you an idea. This is a shared kitchen for 6 individuals. We have what we call our specialist integration homes. So each individual has sort of their own, they have their own bedroom and ensuite, and some individuals also have their own kind of kitchenettes or living spaces. That's their own, because then it's kind of the world on their own terms. They can be a part of this space if they want to be. And several different types of environments together. So not everybody suits one type of environment. It's that kind of that old adage, one size doesn't fit all, and you can't expect it to. You can't expect for individuals to slot into something. It has to be about designing it around them. And it's just, I think environments are really important, making sure you can find the right environment. Space is always quite key as well. Having access to sensory spaces, quiet spaces, if they have their own environment, their own room that they can go back to, that's not just their bedroom, but another living space, is really key. So just gives you a bit of an idea. So here's the family. This is Paul and Hugo, and there's Laura as well. Laura has, she has learning disabilities, some quite complex health needs, mental health needs. It's complex in different ways, and they've always had to fight for Laura, and it all started right from the very beginning. And this might resonate with a lot of families, actually. This is what they were told when Laura was born: your daughter's handicapped, she might live, she might not, and that's it, off you go. By the way, good luck. No one told them what to do or where to go or where to start. And I think that's been quite a common theme for them throughout, was they had to literally do it all themselves. But, you just get on with it and it becomes life for you. And Laura fit into family life. like every proud parent, they talk up her abilities. You know, she was delayed with starting to talk and to walk and different things like that. But when she did start to do it, it was like fantastic. You know, how fantastic is this? But when it comes to transition, I will come back to this because actually it's quite a key thing. Sometimes if you are talking up their abilities, it's talking about how they're able to do that, what support is in place for them to be able to do certain things, or if they are still working towards doing certain things, what support do they need to do that? So we'll talk a little bit more about that aspect of things for transition. But you know, when Laura was growing up, they were complete denial about the future. They had no idea of what the struggles were. They were just living life. And no one else really understood. No one in their family really understood what they were going through. You feel quite alone going through it, really. But, you know, you just kind of get on with it, fighting for everything as you need to. But it all builds in the experiences. And I do say to a lot of families, what you go through throughout your child's life up to this point will help you when you come into adult services. You can live on those, you can learn from those experiences, but it's using it in this new process within adult services, which you know, hopefully some of this can help you navigate some of that. So in terms of Laura's transition, she actually went to a special school up to the age of 18. Then it was looking at colleges. So the local colleges, I mean, the idea was that Laura would stay at home, and Anne would say if she was here, she would have wanted Laura to stay at home forever, because no one can care for your child like you can. But then when they started looking at local options and they couldn't find any, they realised actually they did need to look further afield to find something more specialist, because Laura wasn't finished with education. She still needed that educational facility, but it had to be right. So they found a specialist residential college. They went through the application process. They managed to get the funding. At the time, they managed to get 7 years. I mean, that's unfortunately, that's not, I don't think that'd be quite the case now. They were lucky, you know, at that time to get that long. But it was the making of Laura. It was a fantastic experience for her. Difficult for Anne. She would openly admit that letting go was a really big step. She had to make sure that it was the right place and that she felt completely comfortable and that she could trust that they were going to support her in you know, in the best way that they could before she would let that happen. So actually she did a lot of research. But in terms of further education, college placements are usually for 1, 2 or 3 years, but it is always down to reviewing things annually in line with the EHCP, and EHCPs are always about measuring outcomes. So it's what outcomes, you know, a young person is aiming to achieve, and are they still achieving that in their education? Further education, it may be full or part-time education. The rest might be made up with things like work experience, day opportunities, different things like that. So it's just being aware. If you're looking at local provision, you might need to look at additional things throughout the week. But you can also look at residential colleges if you feel like your young person's needs couldn't be met in a local college. So there are residential colleges all across the country, and there's a good website here, natspec.org.uk, that does have a list of different places to look for specialist colleges, and you can look by geographical area, which is quite useful. So Laura's transition after education. So she finished college, her placement had ended. Paul and Anne were back into that position of having to look for the next steps. They had to consider all the options. You know, Laura moving back home, it wasn't the right next step, just because they realised that they couldn't offer Laura a fulfilled and independent life at home. Laura would have to fit into their lives, and it wasn't the right thing for Laura at that point. So they knew that she needed some form of residential care. They looked all across the country. They looked at over 20 care homes nationwide. Some of them were really disappointed, quite disgusted by some of them. The smell, the environments were poor, people were sat around with no purpose, and it really made them quite miserable, but also, you know, it made them think, well, what we've been fighting all this time. A lot of the placements, I should probably just explain, were sort of elder care facilities as well, because of Laura's health needs. And that was a real issue. You know, she'd been in this peer group with young people to then move into an elder care facility. That wasn't the right next step for Laura at all. And they were quite shocked that that was even considered an option, to be honest. So, yeah, things got very desperate for them. And they were actually offered something called supported living, which was local to them in Somerset, which is where they live. Unfortunately for them, for Laura, the placement wasn't right. There were a few different reasons for it not working. Two really main considerations, really. The first one being that she wasn't really compatible with who she was living with. So there wasn't really an emphasis on who she was going to be living with. It was just sort of, here's the vacancy, here's where she'll move into. And the second, so she couldn't get along with them, who she lived with. And the second real issue was consistency of staff. Something that happens in care a lot. Unfortunately, absences happen, people go on holiday, people, you know, things happen. And a lot of care agencies can be used to backfill for those moments. And unfortunately for Laura, because she is so complex, it just increased her anxieties even more. And the placement just broke down. Her behaviours really increased, and it didn't work for her. It does work for some. I'm not saying it's not an option, but for them, they tried it and it really didn't work for her. So in the end, they set up home from home care, and that's where it all came about, really. They'd gone down all of the other options. They'd even gone through a placement breakdown, and they decided, you know, after all of this, there's no way that we can do nothing, so we have to do something. So they set up home from home care, and that was about 17 years ago now. So yeah, it's been a journey anyway. But transition from education is probably the biggest decision you will have to make for your child, which is why it's so important to get it right. And I always say information is power. The more informed you are, the better informed you are to make decisions. But it's also important to decide what's best for your child, which unfortunately it sometimes might not be what's best for you. And Anne would probably agree with that, because initially when she was looking at colleges, she didn't want Laura to live away from home. That wasn't something she wanted. But she had to think, what would I rather? Well, even just Laura living in supported living, it was down the road, you know, she was so close to Laura, but she was getting phone call after phone call saying, this isn't working. Laura, you know, can you come see Laura? Now she lives in Lincolnshire, and Paul and Anne still live in Somerset, but she's supported and she's happy, and they get phone calls saying, you know, how well Laura's doing, and they say, does Laura want to come home? They're like, oh, she's got a party this weekend, and all this sort of stuff. But they realise she's got a life, you know. Laura's 42 now, so she's an adult, and that's what they wanted for her. I mean, it's still hard, but it's thinking about what's right for them and their future lives. And this goes back to what I was saying before about talking up their abilities. Sometimes you really want to say what they can do, but what you have to do as well is to remember to talk about the worst days, what happens when they're having a really difficult day, because any provider needs to know what that day looks like, so they can also put provisions in place to be able to support them when things just aren't going as well, you know, as well as the good days. And even if they can do something, it's sort of saying, what support do they have to be able to do that? So, you know, sometimes it can be a bit of a tick box exercise. You know, they can do this, wow, tick, yes, but to do that, they have to have X, Y, Z in place to be able to do it. So it's making sure you break everything down to really explain that. And it's important to do your own research. Look into everything. Don't wait for it to sort of be shown to you. You just have to get out there and find it. But also don't leave it too late, because it can take time to go through all those processes, especially at the moment as well, which I will go on to. So there are 3 types of options when it comes to adult care. The first option is living at home. Then we have something called supported living, and then there is something called residential care. I do often get asked what's the difference between supported living and residential care. The main difference would be, in supported living, an individual would be a tenant in their own property, basically. So they'd be a tenant, so they would have a tenancy, they would have their bills and their rent and everything, which would be paid for through housing benefits, which comes from central government pot. then the local authority would fund the care hours to come in to support them in their own home, and they would access activities and things. Residential care would be a full package. So it would be housing, there'd be care, there'd be activities all in one package, and that's all funded by the authority. So that's the main difference, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. But it's kind of asking yourselves the questions when you're going through the different options. The realities of living at home, can you offer fulfilling opportunities? Are there fulfilling opportunities in your local area that they can access, work, day opportunities, different things like that? It depends on your local area, what's about. Look at it all. Can you offer that there? Another one is you might offer the best care, but is it the best support? It's kind of the difference between making the cup of tea for them or supporting them to make the cup of tea themselves. It might take longer, but it's support rather than care, if that makes sense. It's also considering that the structure needs to be around your child rather than them trying to fit into what you're doing. You know, can you do that? And there are sort of agencies that you can come in to do personal assistance and things like that. So there are different options that you can look into. It's just look into it as an option, really. There can be a lack of community, and again, it depends what's there in the local area. But going from education and school environments to living at home, it's making sure you can still create that, give them that opportunity for community. And the big question, you know, what happens when you get older? What happens when, you know, you're not there anymore, which is a really awful thing to say, and it does make me feel quite sad asking that question, because as a parent I know how awful it must be to think about it, but you kind of have to think about it, because who else is going to do it for you? Is there someone else that can make those decisions for you, for your young person? But if you weren't there, what would happen? It's just asking the question, really. Supported living, in our experience, we tend to find it works for less complex people, more independent living. And again, it's just being realistic. Do you feel like your child would benefit from that type of support? From, if you go and have a look at different supported living environments, you know, do you feel like your child would be able to be supported in that service? Always remember, there are good and bad services. You know, you just have to look at all of them. You'll get a feel. You will get a gut feel when you see something and you think, you know, is this the right thing? You might think it's not. You still got to go and have a look, ask the questions and see it for yourself. Residential care. In our experience, again, it's more appropriate for more complex people. And again, you have to be realistic. Is this your child? Because at the end of the day, the funding element of that, you have to be able to evidence why a residential care package would be more suitable or a supported living package wouldn't be suitable. And always remember, there are good and bad services, and unfortunately they're unlikely to be on your doorstep, a little bit like residential colleges. So you may have to consider the whole distance aspect and if that's right for your circumstances. And every family is very different, and it's just what's going to work for you as a whole unit. So something to think about, something else to consider. It's important to work with your local authority. They will have services that they will want you to look at and work with them, look at everything that they're telling you to look at, but also don't be restrained by what they're saying is available. You can find what you want if you feel like it's the right thing for your child. So for instance, for more complex people, funding is available for residential care and not just supported living. And that's just from our experiences, because we have individuals funded with us from all over the country who got that residential care package. It's just you have to sort of look at the supported living package first to ascertain whether it would be suitable. And if it's not suitable, then you can prove why a residential placement would be more suitable. You just have to go through that process of evidencing it first. Out of county placements are possible, and you are entitled to your child is entitled to legal aid as well. So things to consider, but you know, it is about working with your local authority, and you know, it's good if you have a good social worker. If you're not on good grounds with local authority, then it's, you know, you just have to keep pushing with them to get that maybe asking for a different person to work with, or, you know, it might be a different team. All authorities are quite different, so it depends where you live, but some authorities have teams, others you get allocated a social worker, so it just depends really. But start early, plan well. It is up to you to make the case. It's so easy to be lulled into a false sense of security. If your young person is thriving in the environment that they're in, if they're in education, and you think, I've got another year or so yet, I don't need to think about it, that time goes so quick. Like, click your fingers, it's gone. Where's the last year gone? You know, when you think about it, it'll fly by. So the sooner you think about it, there's no point sort of dipping your head in the sand. It's going to happen. So the sooner you think about it, the better. You can request sort of EHCP meetings, best interest meetings. I mean, before you say about taking minutes, but now a lot of it's online, so you can get recordings of the meetings. So, you know, keep recording so you've got evidence of the meetings happening. As much as you can, depends on the you know, once everything sort of happens again, visit as many places as you can. There's something called the local offer on every authority website. Have a look at it. Your social worker might give you a list of them as well. But look at the local offer, look what's available, look at supported living, look at all the options that they're telling you to look at, but ask all the questions you can think of. Have a list ready. What Anne had to do, she wrote down a whole list of questions, and she thought of everything she needed to ask, and then she asked the same questions at every single provider, and then it meant that she had like a dossier of evidence. So she could sort of look back, and local authority would say, what about this place? She could pull out the report and go, it's not right because of X, Y, Z, or it is right because of, you know, you've got your evidence, then it's all in one package. And then it means you can evidence everything and say why something isn't appropriate if it isn't. Here's Laura, horse riding. So Laura loves horse riding. Really great exercise. Laura has scoliosis of the back, so it's really good gentle exercise for her. She used to go to riding for the disabled, where it was very much about sort of someone leading the horse, really holding on to it. And her core team said to Paul and Anne, right, we think that Laura needs the next step. She needs a different stable. She needs to go somewhere where she can have more control of the horse herself. And they said, oh, no, that can't happen. She'll fall off, she'll hit herself. You know, it's just not, it can't happen. She'll hit herself. The core team said to Paul and Anne, look, we appreciate what you're saying. What we'll do is we'll risk assess everything. We'll find the right stables. We'll introduce the horse. We'll do it one step at a time. We'll do it right. But it's the right next step for Laura. And so they did it, they tried it. Laura got on the horse. She was doing left turns and right turns and trotting over things. And she progressed so much by just going on to that next step. And it made Paul and Anne realize that they were holding her back because they were trying to wrap her in cotton wool. And sometimes you just have to let your children live, let them go a little bit, just so that they can still develop and grow and be there, you know, experience things basically. Still, you know, risk assessed and everything, you know, you've got to do all of that. But yeah, it was incredible what she could achieve. Something else that we refer to, which I often say to families to look at, you may recognise this, it's called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It was something that was designed looking at different levels of what needs to happen for a human being to be fulfilled and have a full actualized, what he called an actualized life. It's built up of these 5 levels: survival, which is sort of making sure you've got food and water and all that sort of thing. Security, having a roof over your head, a place to sleep, relationships, friendships, all that side of things, fulfillment, achievement, outcomes, and then self-actualization. A lot of providers will focus on the bottom layers. So, you know, they've got the food, the water, security and all that sort of thing. But it's also important to ask the questions, how will they encourage friendships? How will they give your child fulfillment, outcomes? How will they look at achievement? How will they continue to progress your young person? It's important to ask these questions. How will they do it? How is that provider? How do they operate to enable that to happen? A lot of it all comes down to having the right type of staff that are there. You know, when you're asking the questions that you want to ask, it's kind of finding out a little bit more, not just about the aesthetics, you know, what a place looks like. it's how it's run, because that tells you a lot. It tells you a lot about provider. You know, ask them about the churn of their staff. How often do people leave? How often do the new people come in? How are they trained? What do they do for their training? What happens at night time? What do they do with nighttime checks? How do you know that things are happening? It should be happening. What's the ratio of staff? I don't know, what happens activity wise? How much agency do they use? You know, ask these questions because it gives you a real insight. It tells you operationally how they would work, because at the end of the day, it's not just about having a roof over their head. It's also about how they live a life and how they thrive, and how does that provider do that? And that's the kind of questions, yeah, to consider as well. So COVID, how has COVID impacted? Transition to placement still need to happen. So it's just about being, it's about having a sensible approach. It's about reducing risk as much as possible. Obviously at the moment there's no visits, but you can still ask as many questions as you can. Ask about their operations, ask what they're doing about food supply, which is very COVID, you know, at the moment, you know, family visits, what's happening around infection control measures, what's happening around communication. A big thing for home from home care is it's about transparency. You know, our families need to know what's happening at all times. We set up a YouTube channel where we share everything. We share our management meetings, we share videos of what's happening in the homes, the activities that we're putting into the services, we're talking about all the parties that are being arranged and all the meaningful activities that are still happening, because families, you still need to know what's happening. And it's important to ask those questions when you speak to providers to see how they're handling COVID, basically. Request assessments. In our circumstances for home from home care, we don't want to delay the process from happening, because transition still needs that. It's going to happen. But it's important that we can still do an assessment, and we would do that safely. We would do it through Teams meetings, through gathering documents and videos and all different sorts of things to build a picture. We would do a provisional offer, and once agreed in principle with the local authority, we would then do a socially distanced, making sure it's very safe, PPE, everything, lateral flow testing before doing a social distance assessment as well, which literally would just validate what we've done in our initial assessment. But that's the process we would follow. However, something to bear in mind with timings is that COVID is impacting on timings. To give yourself a bit of extra time. And the reason I say this is because things like assessments, because we're having to adapt our assessment process, it means it's adding on to timings. You've also got things like when we create a new placement for an individual, we completely design that environment bespoke from scratch. So, you know, if you've got contractors that are coming in, you can only have one set of contractors in at a time because of the risks and things. We're having to struggle with some materials, trying to access them. So it all adds on to the time. So the more time you give yourself, the better, really. And you've got things that can happen, you know, if there's any isolations that need to happen and that sort of thing, you give yourself a bit of a buffer for timings. And lockdown doesn't mean lack of meaningful activities. In our experience over the last year, it's brought about so much creativity. Our staff have been incredible. They've just come up with so many different ideas of how to bring meaningful activities into the homes. Like they couldn't go out bowling, so we brought the bowling alley to the home, and they couldn't go to the pub, so we brought the pub into the home, you know, all these different things. And it's important to ask a provider, how are they still enabling those meaningful activities? Because it doesn't mean it stops. It doesn't mean you can just watch TV all day. And that's actually a question I get asked a lot from Paul and Anne. Well, not a question really, it's a statement. Sometimes I hear from families that the provider, you know, they've asked, oh, what's my young person done today? Oh, we asked them if they wanted to go out, but they didn't want to. And this is a big thing you might come up against, because with a young person being over 18, there's the Mental Capacity Act, it's their decision if they want to do something, but it's how they ask the question, it's the engagement. So if I said to Laura, Paul and Anne's daughter, oh, it's not very nice outside, we could go for a walk, or we could watch a film. Well, she would watch a film all day, you know, because she enjoys doing that. And you're not giving her any engagement to do the activity, but But if I said to Laura, right, Laura, we can go for a walk to the church and see all the different flowers there, or we can go, we could go swimming, or if you give her different options of things she enjoys, she'll pick one. But it's very different. Everyone's very different in how they engage. And it's just important to have the right people, the consistent people around a young person that can enable that, and to engage with them in an activity and not just take sort of the easy option. It's about the engagement level. It's active support. There's a video here, and I'm not sure if it's going to play. So let me just, I'll come back to the video. Remind me to come back to the video. So just examples, really, different things that we've done in lockdown, over the last year, really. Parties, we've had Hawaiian nights, we've set up our own YouTube channel called Care to Watch. We've delivered activities into the homes, and individuals have actually led the activities. So, you know, doing their own cooking shows, or doing a Keep Fit class, and they've done it as a show on YouTube, which is great. One member of staff has horses at home, so she brought a horse in. So many parties, roller coasters. They've, you know, created their own roller coaster in the homes. They've grew their own sunflowers. Every year we would do a May ball. Normally, we couldn't do it that last year, so we did a virtual one. Everyone had their own party packs, and they did their own party at home, and then everyone shared what they did. This young man wanted a pub, so we got him an inflatable pub for the garden. You know, there's creative ways you can think of to do things, and it's great to see the outcomes really that come from it. There's a lot of emotions involved with all of this, and what I would always say with anything to do with transitions, all I can do is share with you different options. It's completely up to you which options you feel is best for your situation, but it is extremely emotional. But at the same time, just keep remembering, because sometimes you can feel quite alone in it, but you're not alone. There are other people going through it. Like just in this group, I don't know how many people are here, but just everyone that's just come together to hear me talk about this. It's important to have connections with other people, ask questions, and don't feel quite alone in it, really. And just keep remembering, you know, once you know what you want, once you know, you think you know what you feel is the best for your young person, you can get what you want. You just need to keep fighting and pushing for it, and don't let go of that. Keep going for what you believe is the right thing. A lot of people ask me, well, Paul and Anne say if they'd known what they were getting into, would they set up home from home care? And I don't think they would have. It's so complex, but at the same time, they wouldn't do anything else, and they would share that with other parents, you know, other people, if they wanted to do something similar. Obviously they'd have a chat with them to support in any way they could. So that's another thing. And Laura's thriving, so yeah, she's living her best life, and that's all they wanted for her, to have her own life. So yeah. We have a blog, createdbyparents.com. It shares a lot of what Paul and Anne went through, a lot of insight into, you know, talking around what is the difference between supported living and residential care. It can be quite complex to get your head around it all. Do have a look. There's a lot of things on there to do with the Mental Capacity Act. I would urge you to have a look at that, to clue yourself up on it, because as soon as a young person turns 18, they're classed as an adult under the Mental Capacity Act. But there's also the Families in Care Act. There's different things, you know, local authority have duty of care, different things to read into so that you know your rights as a parent. And there's a few links on that website for you. We also set up something called the Social Care Diary, like I explained before, a YouTube channel to share everything that we're doing through lockdown, through COVID, sharing our journey. You can see that there, and just a few more. So it's been a roller coaster year, full of so much. But you know, in the latter part of last year, we were awarded Investors in People Platinum, and we also won Best Care Home Group with the Care Awards, which was fantastic. And to be honest, that was just amazing, incredible for our staff, because it was the staff. Our staff are incredible. They every day they go over and above all the time, and that award it's just a one team approach that everyone deserves that award. So yeah, I'll see if I can play this video for you before I go. Let me go back to the link. this video talks about active support. Hang on a sec. And it's got our PBS manager talking about active support, and it's about supporting individuals to with their daily living skills in in adult services. So.
Anna, we can't hear it properly. Something you can do with the sound.
Hang on a second. I can't do anything with the sound.
Don't worry. Alternatively, because it's not really coming up properly, what we can do, I will share that link with everyone.
I'll share the link. That's fine. It was just a nice video to share, just what active support's about. Because sometimes people ask, well, what are the activities that individuals do? What do they do in adult care? And active support. So our PBS manager explains that it's not just about care, it's about actively supporting someone in the best way, and there's different ways to encourage individuals to do that, whether it's hand over hand, whether it's communicative gestures, whether it's being there to support them, to sort of give them prompts and things. There's different ways, but it's still at the same time it's looking at those outcomes and if they're achieving things. So yeah, I
just want to say thank you, Anna. We've got lots of questions and we want to try and get through as many. No, it's an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. But we've got a lot of questions and we want to try and get through as many as possible. And the ones that we can't get through, obviously, we'll hopefully be able to pass on to you, that will be able to email the answers. So Tally, over to you for the first person, please.
Right, so I'll just go through one that came by email, and then what I'll ask you to do is, if you can, because I can't find you on, because there's so many of you here, if you can put your hand up and then I will unmute you, then you can speak directly to Anna. So we had Nicola, who sent an email, said, where do I stand once the local authority cease EHCP and college in July for my daughter who is 21?
Well, EHCPs are in place when an individual is within an education setting. If they're no longer in an education setting, then the EHCP would cease. So if they moved into our settings, for instance, we would continue it through the daily living skills and things like that. Unfortunately, that sounds like a legal thing, so it might be worth contacting a legal firm for advice. I don't know where you stand legally on whether they can just stop the HCP, but if someone, as far as I understand, if someone's not in an education setting, they wouldn't still have their HCP, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, I think this is a similar sort of question from Sean, who says, my daughter is 19, struggling to find a college that can meet all the needs of many previous educational place breakdown failures. Is there any company that can look through the plan and recommend colleges that would meet the needs in the country?
Unfortunately, I think it would be about locating other providers to do assessments to say whether they could meet the need. So, I mean, there are other colleges, like I said, natspec.org.uk is quite a good website to find other provisions.
Sorry,
can I also say, if you check out Living Autism, they can actually help you find a suitable college or residential placement or whatever it is that you're looking for, supported living, and it's a free service for you. So if you check it out, it's Living Autism, and they've been going for quite some time and have a fantastic people on the board who's been working there for quite some time now. So Living Autism, we've worked with them in the past through our Autism Hero Awards.
Would anyone like to speak directly to Anna? Do you want to put your hand up and have a quick chat with Anna? Because I can't see any hands up, but I know there's loads of questions. Let's have a look. Julie, This is not in any order, it keeps moving so fast. Julie says, do you need to pursue continuing with an EHC post-19? Can you still apply for residency? Do you have details for living autism? Well, we'll put a link up when I at the end. What I'll do is when I send out the video, I'll put as many links as I can for you to access afterwards. Sorry, Anna.
That's fine. I mean, like I said before, EHCP, if you're looking at a residential college, EHCP would continue over. If it's not an educational setting, you wouldn't get the educational side of things. You know, the EHCP wouldn't necessarily continue, but it would be down to the provider to explain and continue the daily living skills and that sort of thing, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. All right, so a lot of people are saying how daunting they're finding it and how terrifying they're finding the whole process. And I think preparation is the key. Karen Cotton says, do they maintain more autonomy in supported living versus residential care?
I mean, it's completely different for each individual. So it depends. And it really would be down to seeing what would be suitable for each young person. I mean, like I said in my presentation, I mean, it works exceptionally well for some people. For some people, it's not quite the right support in supported living, and the same for residential care. It's not for everybody. It completely down to that person. You have to look at all the options to see for yourself what you feel would be suitable. But
can I ask a question? Just thinking out loud. If say, for example, that obviously because you are based in Lincolnshire, which is miles away from, say, for example, for me, but say I was thinking for Angelo, because I live in Hillingdon. So say, for example, I was to buy a house, or I've just discovered that they've got this, apparently they're the only borough in Hillingdon that you can actually do a first-time buyer scheme where they help you. There's not a lot of local authorities to do that. So say if I was to buy a house for Angelo, the same package of care that you've got, would you be able to help me create that particular package of care around Angelo, but obviously in his own home that I would set up? Is that something that you would offer?
At the moment, it's not, but it is something that Paul and Anne would like to explore further. It's understanding, because it would be whether you would be setting it up as a residential provision or as a supported living. There's different there's different things to consider if you're doing either or. But certainly with our model of, because we operate a very different model of care. I could go. I'll go really briefly. I'll just really quickly explain it. So, traditionally in care, in a care home setting, you would have a home manager who manages everything for that home. They would be doing all of the recruitment, all of the putting people through training, CRB checks. They would be taking phone calls from people calling sick. They'd be doing absolutely everything for that home.
Okay.
We find it doesn't work as a model because you're putting so much on one person. They're having to do so many different types of role. How can they do them all effectively? And they end up burning out. They end up moving on. You've lost all that information, all that knowledge in one person is gone, and you're left back at square one. So what we did is we changed the model so that we have departments, we call them intersources. So we have recruitment, training, PBS, L&D, all these different groups of people where it's their expertise, and they work alongside the manager. So the manager focus is actually on the care in the home and the support, and they're actually rotated into supporting shifts because that's what they went into care for in the first place. So it means that they've taken that pressure off, and that's the model, and it's something that we're adapting at the moment to how we could offer that potentially to other people wanting to set something up in their own area.
I was thinking of something like an outreach where you would help with the recruitment, where you would help with the policies, where you would help with the training, all that sort of thing. So almost transfer what you're doing, but and I would say there'd probably be a lot of people that would be quite happy to do something like that, because obviously everyone doesn't want their son or daughter to move like 3-4 hours away.
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, they'd be open to starting the conversation, absolutely, to see how we could do it. What I would say about distance is it is incredibly hard, and I guess it comes down to that kind of initial, it's about finding the right place. And I can only go back to how Paul and Anne had their experience of they were in a placement where it was on their doorstep and it wasn't right, compared to where they are now, where Laura's a bit further away, but it's the right place
Yeah, yeah. And I would definitely say for people to visit as many places as possible, and not only for your own self, it's for the local authority, because you've got to be seen as if you like playing the game, even though you might know that you have a particular provision in place that you think, yeah, that's definitely going to be suitable, but you've got to show the local authority that you've visited so many places. And I visited places where they do stink of urine, and like I think I wouldn't even put a dog in there. So there are places like that are out there, so you need to be very, very careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so Kevin Sullivan, I'm just going to unmute. Can you unmute yourself, please? And you can ask your question to Anna. Excellent.
Yes, hi, deputyship. Would deputyship be helpful in getting a placement? And if so, which type, the health or finance?
A difficult one to say, because when it comes to deputyship, it obviously does give you some more legal rights. I say that more in terms of, so there's two. I don't know if anyone might not know about the different deputyships. So you've got deputyship for health and wellbeing and the deputyship for finance. It doesn't necessarily mean that the local authority don't have the overall sort of decision, because it's their funding. So you still have to go through the process. It doesn't cut things out. You still have to go through the processes. In our experiences, it doesn't necessarily mean you can bypass it, if that makes sense. So, but it would be worth speaking to I was saying to Tally before, having a legal group to talk about deputyship and actually how it can help, or whether it does help or not, because it's not really my level of expertise, I have to admit. So some families,
I think if we put all the questions together, so the ones that obviously you're not going to be able to answer because there are more legally minded, if we can't answer them, we will find someone to answer them for you. But I can't reiterate enough, please contact Living Autism. They've got a wealth of expertise. So we will put the website address on I don't know if you can do it on the chat there, Tally.
Yeah, I already have. I've put it on there.
Brilliant.
So everyone will receive the recording, but they'll also receive the transcript as well. So anything that I've typed in there, you'll get. But I'll make a list of all of these provisions and things that Anna are recommending. And if there are any questions that we don't answer, we will find a way of answering them one way or another, because there's loads of stuff coming through. So we have, let's have a look. Sam, oh, sorry, we've got Teresa and Sam, you're already unmuted. Sam Kerslake, could you ask your question, please? And then it'll be Teresa Tunnell.
Yes, hello everybody. I just wanted to ask how long one should allow I mean, I know you could probably allow 5 years, but realistically speaking, if you were to start as the parent, obviously looking for a place, and you thought you'd found a suitable place, my first question is, could you actually, how in advance could you potentially secure a place? And also, how long should you really allow for this process, would you suggest?
A really good question. It completely depends on the authority, depends on everything else that's going on in the circumstances. The timelines can be very different. What I would say is allowing, first of all, you've got to think about getting so for instance, if someone got in touch with us and said, how do we start the process of home care? You need to request an assessment. So the first of all, it's getting the authority to refer an assessment to us. So sometimes that can take time to get them to acknowledge and agree to that. Sometimes they'll do it straight away. It completely depends on the authority. Then we would do the assessment, which can take a couple of weeks, a few weeks, depending on how we need to gather that information. Then it goes back to a funding panel for them to agree. So it depends how long it takes the funding panel to agree that particular package. And then it can go to confirmation of placement, then it would be transition. And transition, we would always say it needs to be a thorough transition, and that depends on the individual. So it completely depends how long that needs to be for them.
But if you were to sort of have to say it, 6 months, 12 months, what should one?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking, sorry.
I obviously appreciate it's different, from authority to authority, but just an idea.
I mean, if you're looking for your young person leaving education next July, I would be starting now. Just to start.
I'd even start 2 years. I'd even start 2 years in advance. Definitely.
Yeah. Because so for instance, if we was to do an assessment, but it wasn't for straight away, it would still give us an idea whether we could support that young person's needs. And if we needed to reassess nearer the time, then we could. And then, for instance, for us, we don't work on vacancy, we work on availability based on compatibility.
Right.
So it's about finding the right placement then. So yeah, I mean, start as early as you can, to be honest.
Okay, thanks.
And I think the difficulty now is you can't actually go and visit the places.
No.
It's all virtual, and I couldn't make a decision when I visited somewhere virtually.
No.
So yeah, I think you need to start as soon as you possibly can.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Yeah. Teresa, can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi. My son, he's 23. He leaves his residential college in July. He's been there for 4 years. And I want him to continue living independently, ideally at the college, at the care home that he is in now, because all the other residents are ex-students. The college are happy for him to carry on living there. However, I have to go through the standard local authority procedure to work through the local framework of providers. So they've got a ranked list of providers in list of, they say quality, but it's also value for money. And they will create a package of my son, a pen portrait, which we'll send out to the providers. They work down that ranked list of providers, and the first 3 or 4 that bid and say, yeah, we can meet his needs for such and such a cost, they'll then offer those to me. So they reckon this is person-centred on offer's choice in line with the Care Act, because they're offering 3 from that list. But I don't want him to go to supported living. I want him to stay where he is now, where he's been for 4 years. He's settled. The staff know him well. He's happy there. He's got a profound learning disability. So supported living offers him nothing over and above where he is now. And I'm just having to go through this process now, and it's just so frustrating. He's where he needs to be now, but I've got to look elsewhere as well. I mean, I've got to jump through all the hoops that they throw at me. But is there any advice you can give me?
I mean, I can hear it's very frustrating. Unfortunately, it's the process that is the way that they follow the process. You will have to say why they're not suitable. So you have to evidence why they wouldn't work. So even though they're saying on a pen picture that they could offer a placement, you would have to say, for whatever reasons you feel it wouldn't be suitable, because of consistency of staff, because of meaningful activities, whatever it is, you have to say why. And actually it does put you in good stead, because he's already being well supported where he is, and he's been there for a while. Actually, you could bring in that transition thing, because he already knows the staff, he knows the environment. That transition, you won't have that thing that to consider. So, use that as well.
You might need some legal support as well to help you with that, and get as much evidence as you possibly can to prove why those other placements are not suitable for your son or daughter. Sorry, I'm not sure.
The trouble is, I've got to do it virtually. I can't visit anyone, and there's a time limit, because I think they give you like a week or so to go through what they've offered and reject them. So I'll have a very short time and a very difficult process of trying to find out why they're not right.
Even more so with that transition period, because transition is so important to have a thorough transition. If someone's moving to a different environment, the provider need to be able to spend time to get to know your young person as well. So if they can't do that, then how can they offer the service based on a pen picture? I mean, you use that maybe. I wish you well. I hope you get there.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Amanda Parkin, can you unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question, because it'll take me forever to read what you've written. Can you unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, lovely. Welcome.
Hi. I was asking the question about my son who's gone into supported living in September. We're still in receipt of direct payments, and also apparently has a care package. We've never had any visibility of the care package, and I wanted to find out whether that was actually legal, and we don't have a social worker, so whether we should be he should be having a proper care plan put in place. Because I'm holding on to the direct payments, or I haven't had a social worker who's asked for them back. because I'm concerned that they're not going to actually accommodate his needs within just what they're calling care. So I think you raised something earlier on that he would, you needed to have sort of meaningful occupation and all that sort of stuff. And because it's in lockdown, there hasn't been any sort of plan or anything. They just literally are locked down, but it is supported living and he is paying his own tenancy. So I'm a bit confused about what he has got and he hasn't got.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So you're paying direct payments for this care package?
No.
No, you're not paying direct payments.
No.
You're okay. That would be another legal question, because it's that kind of legal ground. If you're paying direct payments, you're paying the money to the provider, so you should know what the breakdown is of what's involved. But if it's still being paid by the local authority, they technically, I don't think they have to tell you what the breakdown is.
Okay.
I mean, they should, because you're, parent. So, you're part of the best interest decision. And you could say that, I need to be part of this best interest decision to know what's happening for my child. But
yeah,
it might be worth speaking legal as well.
It looks like from this, some of these questions, we're going to have to get a legal person in and do a separate transition workshop, just basically on legal questions or, definitely. So if we can collate all of those questions that we're unable to answer at this present time, we will either run another workshop, which I'm sure we'll be able to do, and then answer questions that we have already been submitted today. Definitely.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I have all the questions, but I know that you're going to go away today having listened to this, and you're going to come up with 101 more. So please do send me your emails. Your questions. And I'll leave my details on the presentation when I send it out to you, and then at least the solicitor or whoever that we'll have on will be pre-warned as to what sort of questions that they're going to be asked. So yeah, we will do that, and I will look into who we're going to ask.
But again, don't forget, please contact Living Autism if you are looking for someone, because I just can't recommend them enough, because I've spoken to so many families who just saying, oh, there isn't anything near to us, but they actually go and visit. I don't know how many places they've been to visit, and they basically make sure that they feel that they can recommend these placements, and it's a free service. So if it's free, just ask them and just say, I have this question, and they're very, very good at getting back to you very, very quickly.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're going to do just a little bit more, because we've had an hour. We'll stay for a bit longer if that's okay with everyone. Parveen, do you want to ask your question? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask Anna your question? Parveen Mahal, there you go. Hi.
Hi Anna.
Hello.
I think this workshop's really good and it's brilliant, but to get to the stage that we're talking about now, you need to have the transition to have started a lot earlier, when children are at school or young people are at school, and to have a social worker involved. If they don't have that and they reach 18 and that's it, they're not going to go into education, but they need some sort of supported living or residential daycare or whatever it is, how do we bridge that gap? Because we've got a real difficulty, say, with our local authority, that parents are just handed some documents, here you go, off you go, and find whatever. They have no social worker involved, and if there is, it's very sporadic engagement with them. What can those parents do to get their children into a placement, because they're really struggling?
Yeah.
And they end up being at home, and then those parents are obviously struggling to try and find a placement, or they don't know where they need to go to, and it should be the local authority guiding them.
I mean, technically, they should be allocating social workers before a young person's 17 and a half. That's what their target is, to reach, have that transitional social worker. If you haven't been allocated a social worker, they need to keep badgering them, keep pestering them to be allocated a social. They should be allocated a social worker.
Is there anything that we, as a parent carer forum, because I represent a parent carer forum, that we can do, because we're trying to get involved with this transition to move it along and to help parents? We just don't know where to go, how to start the process of pushing it.
Yeah, I mean, it will be down to contacting the adult social services, keep on the disability team, keep on at them until they allocate someone. Start to request, ask for referrals for assessments. They say you've been to see something, you want this. They'll soon come to you and say, "Oh no, that's not on our approved list. It needs to be one of these." And at the end of the day, they have a duty of care for every individual that's under the local authority. And then you can start to go down the legal route of, they're not fulfilling their duty of care. So you have to evidence everything. So if you're doing phone calls, follow it up with an email. If you're not getting a response to an email, put a deadline date on the email to say, I want to hear from someone by this date. If you don't hear by that date, you've got more cause to then move it forward to say, I haven't heard from anybody. I want to hear from you, from your line manager, from the head of adult social care, whoever it is. Otherwise, I'm going to get my MP involved, I'm going to get media involved, whoever it is. I'm going to go to legal. They don't want to go through the legal action route because it's going to cost them too much money. You just got to, you have to build up to that. But keep pestering them. Local authorities, unfortunately, the way that they operate, it's very much on a crisis basis. They're working to the crisis at the moment. If an individual case isn't on their radar as a crisis, they don't recognise it, unfortunately. It's a shame that it seems like they've kind of fallen through a gap, unfortunately. So they just need to get back onto their radar. And once they're on the radar, it should open up some services.
Yeah, I think what happens is those that are the hard to reach, those ones that English is not their first language, they get lost in the system, and and even those that don't even understand the process, they're forgotten and they're lost, and it's how do we help them? I think that's where we are. Okay.
I mean, the local authority, they are the ones that will unlock all of the options, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who provide the funding for everything. So they really do need to get on the radar as much as they can, and just keep badgering them.
Yeah. Can I also say on MenCap as well, they've got transition to adulthood, and they've listed some organisations that can give advice, like Preparing for Adulthood is one organisation, Transition Information Network is another. So if you go onto the MenCap website and check on the link Transition into Adult Services, there's a few links at the bottom of that page that you can actually click onto that might answer some of the questions that you've put forward to us as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna.
Parveen.
That's okay.
Miriam says, so adding to what Parveen is saying, should every young person get a social worker when they turn 18? My son doesn't have one, but is still under EHCP for now.
You should be allocated a transition social worker at least, so it bridges the gap, even if they're still in education. So everything that's been known about that young person in children's services gets transitioned into the adult services side of things, so that they're aware of the young person. If you haven't been contacted about a transitional adult social worker, get in touch with them to request one.
I just think the thing with that social workers as well, there's no continuity. It's very frustrating. You'll get a social worker, and then 6 months later there'll be another one. And I spoke to some social workers from different local authorities, and basically what they're saying is they have a pile of people in the middle, and it's almost like they come in and they take the top one off, and it's just like there's no continuity, and you have to keep re-explaining about your son, about your daughter. That's the frustrating thing that I find about social workers. And I'm not saying there are some excellent social workers out there, but there's just no continuity. And that's the frustrating thing that I find. I think Angelo's had about 5 social workers, and we started transition because he was at Hillingdon Manor when he was 14. So that's when we started the transition period for him. But obviously it's different in every local authority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Our commissioning manager, she used to be a social worker, and she explained when she worked in social services, that's how it worked. You would have a pile of cases and you'd start from the top.
And they just take them off at one at a time, and then you just get used to one, and then they've gone.
Yeah.
And then it's back to a new one.
If you ring up and you badger consistently, and you are that person, that tenacious person that won't hang up the phone until you speak to somebody, they will find your case, get it out and manage it. So you have to kind of be that person that's just going to keep pushing. Unfortunately, it's the ones that make themselves known that get heard, which is a really awful part of the system. But yeah,
it's like Karen Cotton is saying, this is shocking. He's a human being, not an eBay item.
Yeah.
So true how people are treated. So I don't know, there's a lot of comments and some absolutely fantastic advice. Dave Thompson's been fantastic in answering a lot of questions and putting some links up. Let's have a look. So I don't so a lot of people are talking about not having social workers. I think that is one of the key things that people are saying, or they don't trust them. And we can see why from what Anna's saying. If there's no continuity, and I've been through exactly the same thing with my son just recently, where there was a constant change in people, and I'm exhausted about telling the same story again and again and again. And I feel like just recording it and just pressing, right, just listen to this, and just listen, all your questions have been answered. And I think sometimes that's what we need to do. But I don't know if there's anyone else that would like to ask a question, please let me know now. Otherwise, please send me your questions later, and we will definitely, as Anna said, set up a legal session to answer your questions about transition.
Can I ask now, if anyone interested from the group that's on there, would you be interested in a second workshop with a legal person that obviously has the knowledge and the background to answer your questions? Yes. Okay.
I think that's a unanimous.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, we would definitely do it then. Thank you. All right then.
Loads of yeses, loads of absolutely. So yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, that would be a yes then.
I think so now, but I think we'll do it as soon as possible as well, because I think in lockdown, I think the sense of urgency about everything, everything seems to be amplified while we're sitting at home thinking about it. And I know for me, it's the one thing that is on the top of my mind when I wake up, and then before I go to bed, is what's going to happen to my son, what's going to happen, what am I going to do? And
hence my petition. Please sign the petition.
And what we'll do is, again, I will put a link to that up when we send this out, so please do sign that. It's what happens when we can't, exactly what Anna Selby was saying, is that what happens afterwards. It's not short term, this is forever. This is what happens to our kids when we are too old, or have illnesses, or we're just no longer here. That is our biggest fear. So we will definitely this is not the end, this is the beginning of this campaign that we're going to be running, and we need everybody to support us as much as we can. So please get on the back of this and spread the word and share. So thank you. Loads of people, Eileen saying that she's going to share, so there's loads of people.
Thank you. It's actually on the charity website, but it's www.change.org/Anna petition. So it's quite easy. I've tried to make it as easy as possible. So www.change.org Anna what do you call it? One of the forward slash things.
Now you've confused everyone. But Anna shares it on social media daily, so you'll see it on our Facebook page as well. So thank you so much to everybody, and I apologize if I didn't get to your questions, but I will pass the transcript on to both Annas, and we'll look through and respond to as many people as we can. But we will, please watch this space and join us for the legal session. And if there's anything else that you want, please let us know. We are looking at doing some clinics at the Expo. We're just looking at the logistics of how we will have a one-to-one clinics, which will be running alongside the Expo in March, at the end of March. So we'll definitely get a legal person on, and you'll be able to book 20-minute slots with the experts to talk through your concerns and hopefully get some responses. So you'll be doing it one-to-one on Zoom. Hopefully we'll have someone from home care there as well to support any questions that you might have there as well. But we'll be looking at other professionals on mental health and other autism professionals as well on the
Please
day.
keep checking the charity website for updates. I just want to say I've got a fantastic team and everyone's a volunteer. No one gets paid, including me.
We don't get paid.
Yeah.
It's only been 10 years, Anna. It's only been 10 years. But a good 10 years, a good 10 years.
So just want to say thank you to everybody, and please stay safe, stay well, but keep checking the charity website. And if there's any ideas, because we haven't been able to fundraise or anything, you can support us in any way, even if it's £1, it's gratefully received. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna Selby-Wells. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for supporting the charity and coming tonight. We really appreciate it. It means a lot to us. Hopefully we'll see you at the expo, and but watch our websites again for that. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tam. Thank you, Anna. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.